Hello there. I'm Dr. Jonathan Prescott, and if you're a man over 60, I want to talk to you today about something deeply personal, yet rarely discussed with honesty or care. Have you ever wondered why your energy feels lower, why your sleep has become lighter, or why the spark, both physical and emotional, seems to be fading? Now let me ask you a harder question. What if the cause wasn't age or illness, but a private habit you've carried for decades, one you thought was harmless? I've spent more than 35 years working with aging men across the country, veterans, teachers, grandfathers, husbands, and again, I've seen a surprising pattern. It's not masturbation itself that's harmful, but how, why, and when it's done that can quietly chip away at a man's strength, sensitivity, and even his joy. You see, what worked at 25 might be hurting you at 65. Same action, but a very different body, a different brain, a different heart. In today's conversation, I'll walk with you, calmly and respectfully, through the 4 most common masturbation mistakes I've seen men over 60 make. They're not shameful, they're not rare, but they are reversible. And when corrected, they can restore something most men thought they'd lost for good. So I invite you to stay with me, not for judgment, but for clarity, hope, and healing. Because this isn't about giving something up. It's about getting yourself back.
1. Mistake number 1, the dopamine drain. In my decades of clinical work, I've met countless men in their 60s, 70s, and beyond who arrive in my office with the same quiet question. I don't feel broken, Doc, but something's missing. The spark they once had, sexually, emotionally, even spiritually, seems to have faded. A partner's touch don't move them. Their desire feels dim or even gone. And more often than not, they blame age. But in many cases, the real culprit is something quieter and more common than we'd like to admit. It's dopamine. Dopamine is the brain's motivator, the signal of desire, anticipation, and reward. But when it's overstimulated, especially by fast, high-intensity pornography, the brain adapts by downshifting its response. At first, you feel powerful arousal, but over time, you need more to feel the same. And eventually, even real-life touch no longer registers. That's what happened to Joe, 72, who sat across from me with tears in his eyes. Doc, I thought I was just getting older, but now I don't even want it anymore. I can't feel anything. His story isn't rare. Many older men assume their fading desire is hormonal. And yes, testosterone plays a role, but more often I see a quieter exhaustion at play, a kind of dopamine burnout that numbs the body from the inside out. Another patient, Bill, 67, told me he needed twice the time to climax, and when it happened, it felt hollow, mechanical. We adjusted his habits, limited screen exposure, gave his nervous system space to reset. A few weeks later, he came back and said something I won't forget. Doc, I didn't realize how much I'd numbed myself. I feel like I'm waking up again. You don't necessarily need to quit adult material altogether, but you do need to ask, is this still connecting me to myself, or is it pushing me further away? As we age, our brains grow more sensitive to chemical signals, not less. And when stimulation becomes a habit, not a feeling, it starts to work against you. If it's been a while, Since you've truly felt alive in your own body, not from a screen, but from real presence, you're not broken. Your system isn't lost. It just needs space to recover. And when it does, you may find your capacity for connection, intimacy, and joy hadn't disappeared. It's just been waiting for a little silence.
2. Mistake number 2, the sleep disruptor. Over the years, I've heard a familiar line from many of my older patients. Doc, it's the only thing that helps me fall asleep. They're talking about masturbation, usually late at night, often around midnight or even later. Now, at first glance, it makes sense. You're restless, the mind won't quiet down, you release some tension, feel a wave of calm, and drift off. But here's what most men don't know. That sense of calm is short-lived. And in the long run, this nighttime habit can quietly unravel the very thing you're trying to protect: your rest, your hormones, your recovery. Frank, 66, came to see me with a vague but persistent complaint. Groggy mornings, low energy, a sense that he never really wakes up. He'd fall asleep just fine, but he'd wake up exhausted. It's like I'm sleeping, but not getting rest. When I asked about his nighttime routine, he told me he almost masturbated every night, right before bed, sometimes in the middle of the night when he woke up. And that's when the picture started to make sense. You see, climax, especially as we age, isn't just physical. It triggers a complex hormonal cascade. Yes, there's oxytocin and prolactin, which help you relax. But there's also a sharp drop in testosterone and a disruption in melatonin release, which is critical for setting and maintaining your natural sleep cycle. The result? You fall asleep quickly, but the quality of that sleep is shallow. Your body doesn't reach deep restorative stages, and when that happens night after night, your system starts to suffer. In younger men, the body bounces back more easily. But in your 60s or 70s, that rebound is slower. The balance between testosterone, melatonin, and cortisol becomes more fragile and much easier to throw off. So what seems like a harmless ritual, even a relaxing one, may actually be confusing your internal clock, leading to poor sleep, lower energy, and a growing sense of burnout. Frank agreed to try something different. For 1 week, he skipped the nighttime release. Instead, he focused on winding down with a warm shower, slow breathing, and a bit of reading. And here's the key. If he still felt the urge in the morning, when testosterone is naturally higher, he allowed himself to follow it. By the 4th day, he looked different. His eyes were clearer. He stood taller. Doc, I forgot what it felt like to actually sleep through the night. That's the power of timing. Masturbation in and of itself isn't the enemy, but doing it at the wrong time when your body is trying to restore itself can backfire. And when sleep suffers, everything suffers. Mood, memory, weight, heart function, even emotional stability. I've seen men spiral into depression or gain 15 pounds without realizing that their nightly pattern was wrecking their hormonal rhythm. You don't need to stop altogether, but shifting when and why you self-pleasure may be one of the most overlooked ways to regain your energy, your clarity, and your mornings. If you've been waking up foggy, flat, or unmotivated, I encourage you to look closely at your nightly habits. Sometimes the body's whispers are clearest in the dark. 3. Mistake number 3, the pressure problem. Some losses don't happen all at once. They creep in slowly, so slowly you don't notice until it's too quiet to ignore. That's how many men describe the fading of physical sensation. Not the loss of erection, but the loss of feeling. They say things like, I can still get hard, but it doesn't feel like much anymore. It works, but I don't feel connected to it. They assume it's aging,
And sometimes it is, but often it's something far more mechanical and avoidable. One patient, Mark, 71, had used the same technique since his 20s, fast, tight, and dry. "It always worked," he said, until it didn't. Over time, repeated high-pressure stimulation, especially without lubrication, wears down the sensitive nerve endings of the penis. The dorsal nerve, which transmits most of the sexual sensation to the brain, becomes desensitized, not from trauma, but from friction. The same way constant pressure can dull the skin on your hands, it can dull sensation below the waist. The tragedy? Most men don't realize what's happening until years later, when touch feels distant and climax becomes more effort than joy. Mark thought something inside him was broken, but once we adjusted his technique, softer grip, more lube, slower pace, sensation began to return. Not all at once, but enough to remind him that his body wasn't gone. It had just been overwhelmed. And here's what most men don't hear often enough. Your body changes. What felt right at 25 can feel harmful at 65. Not just emotionally, but physically. Just like your knees, your back, your digestion, your sexuality needs adaptation. Not abandonment, adaptation. If you felt yourself growing numb or frustrated, don't ignore it. And don't blame age too quickly. It might not be a failure of the body, but a failure to listen to what it needs now. And the good news? Sensitivity can return, but only if you give it space and gentleness to come back.
4. Mistake number 4. The emotional disconnect. There's a kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It shows up when the house is still, when the phone doesn't ring, when the bed feels too big, and the evenings feel too long. And for many men, especially in later life, that silence becomes the background hum behind their habits, including masturbation. They don't talk about it, not because they're ashamed, but because they can't quite explain what's missing. "I don't even know why I do it anymore," one man told me. "It's not about desire, it's just something to fill the space." He wasn't talking about lust. He was talking about loneliness. For many older men, masturbation becomes less about pleasure and more about routine, a way to cope with absence. The absence of a partner, of touch, of purpose. It becomes a substitute for connection, not a source of it. Walter, 74, lost his wife 6 years before he came to see me. He said, "It's not even about sex anymore. I just don't want to feel so alone at night." What he was really saying was, "I miss being close to someone, not just physically, but emotionally." But the body can't fill an emotional void, and when we try to meet an emotional need with a physical habit, something begins to break down, slowly, subtly, but deeply. We train ourselves to seek sensation without intimacy, to reach for release instead of vulnerability. And over time, we forget what real closeness feels like. When that becomes the pattern, even the most private act can leave us feeling more isolated than before. But here's the part most men don't hear enough. You're not weak for feeling lonely. You're human. And naming that emptiness might be the first step toward healing it. Walter didn't change overnight, but he started writing letters to his wife, not to send, but to remember. He joined a morning walking group. He started cooking for himself again. And slowly, that emotional numbness began to lift. When he did touch himself again, he told me, it felt different, like I was honoring something, not escaping from something. That's the shift. Self-pleasure isn't wrong, but when it becomes disconnected from your heart, it starts shaping your relationship with the world and with yourself. If you felt flat, heavy, or unmotivated, don't assume it's just age. It might be an emotional need hiding inside a physical habit. And the good news is, you don't need to be young to reconnect. You just need to be honest and gentle enough to begin again.
5. The underlying mistake: ignoring what the body is telling you. After working with men for over 35 years, I've noticed something deeper than any single habit, technique, or routine. It's the one mistake that sits beneath all the rest. And it's this: we stop listening to our bodies. We were raised to tough it out, push through, swallow discomfort, and call it discipline. And for a time, that works. Until sleep gets shallow, desire goes quiet, sensation fades. And suddenly, we find ourselves wondering, is this just what getting older feels like? But growing older doesn't mean going numb. It means learning to pay attention in a new way, a quieter way. Because your body is still speaking to you. It always has been. Through restlessness, fatigue, numbness, frustration. Those aren't just annoyances, they're messages. And the most courageous thing a man can do isn't to power through. It's to pause, to ask, what is my body trying to tell me now? If that question stings a little, that's okay. You're not behind. You're not too far gone. You're waking up. And when you make even the smallest change, not just in what you do, but in how you listen, something shifts. You start touching yourself with more awareness. You start sleeping deeper. You start feeling again. Not because you're trying harder, but because you're finally letting your body show you what it's been needing all along. That's not weakness. That's wisdom.
6. Conclusion. If anything you've heard today stirred something in you, a memory, a question, a quiet truth, I want you to know this: you are not alone, and you are not broken. You're just a man who's lived long enough to start noticing what the world never taught you to see. That your body is always talking, that your habits have impact, that even the most private patterns can shape your energy, your connection, and your peace of mind. But more importantly, you still have the power to change, not by force, not with guilt, but with attention, with honesty, with gentleness. So ask yourself, is this still serving me? Or is it time to listen more closely to what my body, my mind, and my heart are asking for now? If this message spoke to you, I invite you to stay in this conversation. Leave a comment. Share this with a friend. And if you believe in content that treats men's health with respect, not ridicule, consider subscribing or supporting this work so we can reach more lives. Because this is how we change the story, quietly, clearly, together. I'm Dr. Jonathan Prescott, and I'll see you in the next one.